right, welcome in everybody to the By the Horns podcast. I'm flying solo today, Casey Johnson, but we have a special guest with us, as you can see. He is none other than the voice of the Bulls and class of 2025 Ring of Honor inductee, Neil Funk. Neil, it's always great to see you, and thanks for giving us some of your time today.
And likewise, great to see you, Casey. It's great to see a familiar face.
Yeah, I mean, we talked a couple times since your retirement. Other than obviously some incredible games, that's the thing you always tell me you miss the most, just being around the people and kind of being in that rhythm of the NBA lifestyle.
Yeah, the people was the big thing. I don't miss the travel, that's for sure. But I do miss, kind of the game action, and I do miss the people. That's the big thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you're going to see some of those people next week when you come up to Chicago for, as I mentioned, the 2025 Ring of Honor class induction. And what a class it is. We're going to talk about your favorite subject, which is you. I'm joking. He's the most humble.
Well, I can remember some things about me and not about other people. So
yeah, no, but Neil, for those of you who don't know, does not like the spotlight on himself. He likes to do his work and go home. But you are going to be in the spotlight next week, the well-deserved spotlight. So we got to start here. What was your reaction when you got the call that you were going to be in this class?
Well, I was surprised. That would have been my first reaction. Michael Reinsdorf called, and when I saw it was Michael on the phone, I was thinking maybe they wanted me to come up to do a game or MC something. So when he told me, it was surprised first, and then a little shocked, and then I was extremely happy. I mean, I'm really proud of this, and happy to be included, even though some of the other guys going in, Paxson, Horace, and Bill Cartwright, and Johnny Bach, they did all the heavy lifting. I just was there as kind of a storyteller.
As usual, you're selling yourself short, because any Bulls fan know that you're the sound of that dynasty. Everyone can hear your call and your voice in their ears. But we're going to get to that in a second. I wanted to talk about that class, though, because it has to be a thrill for you to be going in with so many people that you know and respect, including your former broadcast partner and John Paxson.
Well, that was the coolest thing when they told me John was going in. We've been together so much, as I was a broadcaster, he was a player. Then he and I were broadcasting together, and we had a lot of fun doing that. And then I was the broadcaster when he was the general manager. So we've been together a long time. And of course, Horace has always been one of my favorite people, and Bill Cartwright as well. I'll give Bill some guitar lessons when I see him. But so I'm extremely pleased to be going in with those guys. As I said, they're the ones that did the heavy lifting.
Yeah, and you were part of so many famous games and famous calls. I mean, it's hard to pin down just one, but I mean, when you think back at the dynasty, and obviously you'd covered or called a championship season from your time with the 76ers, which we're going to get into a little bit later. But when you think back to the dynasty, I don't know about you. I mean, you did 5 of the 6. I did 3 of the 6. I had several moments where I would make sure to pull myself out of my work experience body and just remind myself that I was getting to be around sports history. Did you kind of have that feeling being around that?
I did. You mentioned the word work, and I never, in those years, maybe 7 years in a row or whatever with the Bulls, I never considered it going to work. I knew when I arrived at whatever arena we were, whether we were at home or on the road, I knew I was probably going to see something that night that I had never seen before. And on most nights that did happen. So there were a lot of, great moments, maybe some that weren't so great, but I never considered it like, well, I got to go to work today. I was excited to go and see what was going to unfold that night.
Were authored by a certain Michael Jeffrey Jordan. What was your relationship like with Michael away from the court, like on the buses and things like that?
Well, I learned early on. Luckily, I had some great mentors when I first started traveling with the Bulls, and Tom Boerwinkle and Johnny Kerr. And so I kind of followed their lead. With Michael, um, it was always a trust factor. If he trusted you, then he would open up a little bit. I never really asked Michael for anything. I didn't ask him to, here, could you sign for my cousin, or could you do this? And I think over time, Michael got to trust, because we sat kind of across from each other on the plane for a number of years. And so I had a good relationship with Michael. I know there were some members of the media that thought, he kind of pushed them away a little bit. The few times that I did ask Michael to do something, whether it was an interview for halftime or I usually had a good reason for asking. And two, he would always give me a hard time, but he would always do it. So I never had an issue with that. So I kind of kept my distance a little bit from him, whereas with other guys, you could, kind of joke around and stuff. But I found Michael extremely easy to work with.
Obviously, you had so many amazing calls on so many of his amazing moments in games, but one that always stands out to me is obviously, the last shot in '98 in Utah. I was privileged to be covering that game for the Chicago Tribune. You were on the call. What do you remember about that call, and how much are you reminded of it by other people, the shot over Russell?
Well, amazingly enough, there are a lot of people where I am in Florida that are from Chicago. And a lot of them, turns out, were season ticket holders and were around during that time period when the dynasty was kind of forming, and then all the way through the championship years. The last shot, I would agree with you. People ask me all the time, okay, what was the greatest moment? And there were, like I said, I saw something almost every night that I was probably never going to see again. I hadn't seen before. That was special, just because I knew in my heart that this was kind of the end of the run. And I didn't know what players were going to come back. I didn't know whether Phil was going to come back. And so to have Michael do it and hit the game winner, and then that iconic pose as he kind of, shucked Russell off. And by the way, a lot of people say that he pushed him away. He was falling down before Michael even, there was never a chance that was going to be called a foul. So that was certainly a highlight, because that kind of capped off the whole dynasty.
Yeah, obviously. And like you said, that pose will live forevermore. That team had so many larger than life personalities. Dennis Rodman, Phil Jackson, and obviously would attract almost like a rock star circus on the road. What are some of the memories you have of kind of being behind the scenes and kind of witnessing the hysteria from your seat?
Well, I can just remember being on the bus and pulling up to hotels, and this was really almost from the start when I got there. And in those days, we were all on one bus. I think now they got 3 or 4 buses or something, but everybody was on one bus. And we'd pull into these hotels at 2 in the morning, 3 in the morning, and there'd be 500 people, a lot of them kids, and you wondered, are they being homeschooled, or do they not go to school, or what? But just waiting for a glimpse of the players as they got off the bus, and obviously Michael was the big one. And going through, I've never been through so many hotel kitchens in my life, because we'd always have to go around the side, in through the kitchen, and take a service elevator up. But so it was they were so popular, those teams, and not just Michael. The whole team was popular, and it was unbelievable. I do remember one quick story. We were in Utah for Thanksgiving, and we had Thanksgiving at the hotel, the team and traveling party. And then they had the theater, the movie theater was going to be closed, but they had made arrangements to keep it open. The movie, I'll never forget, the movie was Casino with Robert De Niro and Joe Pesci and all. So they opened the theater, but just for us. So we walked from the hotel down to this movie theater. There wasn't one person on the street in Salt Lake City, not one. Never encountered another person. Went into the theater, sat down, watched the movie. When we came out, there had to be 1,000, if not more, people standing outside the theater. Now, somebody, the guy selling popcorn in there, or somebody said, "Oh my gosh, Michael Jordan's at the theater, and the movie's almost over." But Casey, I've never seen that many people, and we had to practically fight our way back because it was something that was totally unexpected. And we walked over, nobody. We walk out, and there's 2,000 people standing there outside the theater. So, and it was like that everywhere we went.
That's an amazing story, but very believable. Obviously, it's that's how big that team and that dynasty was. I want to get a little bit into your background. I always tease you that you're the only guy who went to such a good broadcasting and journalism school at Syracuse and didn't take a broadcast.
Biggest mistake of my life. Yeah, the Newhouse School and the radio and TV, and I mean all of that. And I was, semi-aware of it when I was there, only because you heard people make reference to what a great journalism school it was. It turned out a lot of great writers and TV and radio personalities. Never once crossed my mind to even explore that. Do I wish if I had do-overs? Yeah, I probably would have done it a little differently. But so I, because I didn't, I kind of got my experience at a small radio station in downstate Illinois, which maybe was even better because I had to learn, every facet of the broadcasting in terms of being on the air, selling the time, doing the commercials, cutting the commercials, writing the commercials, learning how to operate equipment, which I was a little shaky on. But so, yeah, if I had it to do over again, there's so many guys that have come out of there now. I don't know how many guys in the NBA, local team guys, are from Syracuse, but there is a ton that were at Syracuse. And if they're not from Syracuse, they were influenced by whether it's Mike Tirico or Ian Eagle or Marv Albert, or, they were influenced by them somehow. So, but as usual in life, I kind of picked the wrong path, but all of a sudden it circled back and everything worked out.
Yeah, it worked out. You were in Danville, right? Doing that?
Yes. Yeah.
And for those that don't know, Neil was quite the high school basketball player in Indianapolis. And then your first year in the league, you probably think this is easy because you go to the finals with the 76ers and 76,
oh, I
77.
Did. Yeah. I did. I realize now it was luck, but at the time I was thinking, oh my gosh, I just get here and, they're in the finals against Portland. They eventually lost with a team that was one of the all-time great writers teams, because writers loved them because there was always something going on. There was infighting and, guys, it was the most undisciplined team. In fact, Doug Collins was on that team, George McGinnis, Julius Erving. They were loaded. I think they had that year in the 82-83 season, I think they had 4 or 5 guys on the All-Star team, including Steve Mix, who was a backup coming off the bench. So, I thought it was easy to get there, but I wondered when it was over and Portland had won, whether I would ever get another chance at that. A lot of my good friends in the league, broadcasters, who never got an opportunity even to get to a conference final, let alone an NBA final. So I consider myself really lucky in that regard.
Yeah, that 76, 77, 76ers team was something that had, like you
Oh
said,
my
really,
gosh.
really crazy personalities.
And
Then you go and work in Kansas City for a while, calling the Kings, and you come back to the 76ers for, you briefly alluded to, the 82, 83 title team, which I think is one of the most overlooked teams in NBA history. One of the most dominant teams of all time, 65 wins, 12-1 in the playoffs, and they win a championship.
yeah, I mean, I agree with you. I think they're overlooked when they talk about the greatest teams in NBA history. That was a team that was loaded, and much like the Bulls, they were a really terrific defensive team when they needed to be, led by Bobby Jones, who was a great defender, could guard just about anybody in any position. And they were explosive offensively. And then they had the machine in Moses Malone. It was kind of the twilight of Julius's career, although he was still pretty good. But Moses was just he was a man playing with boys, the entire season, and they rolled through the playoffs. So now I'm thinking, okay. I've been in Philly 2 different occasions, both times to the finals the first year. Well, then the next year, Philly, who's a heavy favorite, gets knocked off in the first round by New Jersey. So again, I'm thinking to myself, well, at least I can say I called NBA championship games. And then obviously the luck of the draw, and I end up coming to Chicago, and that was the start of an unbelievable run.
Talk us through a little bit about the origin of that. Obviously you replaced Jim Durham, and just kind of how did that came about, and what was your reaction to landing the Bulls job initially?
Well, actually, Jim and I were really close friends, and we had known each other since he was at Illinois State and I was doing Illinois football and basketball. So we had known each other a long time. Obviously, I had been in the league in Philly and Kansas City and stuff while he was in Chicago. Not only a wonderful broadcaster, one of the best, just a terrific guy. And so we talked often. And so I was aware that last year that there were some things going on with a new contract and whether or not they were going to simulcast or split the broadcast. And so I was aware of all that. And then he told me, I think he told me, or maybe Joe Tate or somebody, another broadcaster, called me and said, the Chicago job is open. At that time, in Philly, there were some issues on who was going to. They had Prism, which was kind of the in-house. They were going to carry games, and then Comcast was going to carry some games. There were going to be some over the air, and who was going to do what. So I wasn't thrilled with everything that was going on, and so I thought, you know what, maybe I'll just explore this. And I have a job here if I want to stay, and if not, I'll explore it. So I sent a tape to Steve Shanwald, I think at the time, and heard back, a couple of weeks later, and this was summertime, I think, and they asked me to come in for an interview. So I came in, and I remember Rick Starr, the radio games were on WMAQ, and Rick Starr, who was running MAQ, and Steve Shanwald did the interview. And I remember clearly one of the things that they asked me was, well, we just hired a TV guy, and you're coming from TV in Philly. Is it going to bother you to go back to radio? And I said, no, because radio has really been my first love anyway. I mean, that's a whole different story, but I said, absolutely not. Well, as it turns out, I end up getting the job. And, my first thought when I got it was, well, they won the title last year. I know how hard it is to repeat, so I'm not counting on that. I know Michael Jordan is a really, really good player. I mean, because I only saw him a few times a year, and I said, so I'll get to see Michael, and they're going to be a good team, everything else. And then I got there, and I remember going to practice, and then going out to lunch with Phil Jackson, and we sat down at the table, and my first words to him were, I said, "Oh my God, you guys are going to win it again!" And just watching the practice and how they practice. So that's essentially the story, and that was the best move I ever made in my life. My wife loved the Bulls, loved Chicago. I love Chicago, love the Bulls. So I was in a great city, a lot of great people. I was back in the Midwest where I belonged, and with a collection over the next 8 years of players that were almost unbeatable.
Chicago loved you too. You worked with some great partners over the years. I mean, Hubie Brown, Chuck Daly, Doug Collins, Stacey, obviously. I always say, like, if John had wanted to stick in broadcasting, obviously he had a successful run as an executive, but the way he saw the game when he was working alongside you on radio, he was almost like Steve Stone in the sense that he was like 1 or 2 steps ahead of everybody else. So, I mean, what was it like working with so many talented people?
Well, there's first of all, what you just said about John is absolutely true, and I've said to him many times, had he wanted to, he could have gone to work for TNT or NBC at the time, or ABC, easily, and been a national analyst. And you're right, I did get a chance. I had some great broadcasters and great friends as analysts in Chicago, Tom Boerwinkle and Bill Wennington and Derek Dickey and obviously Stacey, who I was with the longest. And so they were all terrific. And then in various other places with Hubie and with Doug, guys who were nationally known as analysts. And I've always thought this, 𝗪cie, that when I first went to TV from radio, a lot of the radio I did early on, you're by yourself. There was no analyst, so you're just doing the game and doing your thing. But I always thought that TV and the modern NBA game, it's an analyst game. The analyst is a star, and should be. And the play-by-play guy is just kind of driving the bus and steering and turning for a commercial break and bringing it back and everything. But the analyst is the star. And I mean, I had some good ones from, Stacey to all those other people we just mentioned, who were great. And that didn't bother me. I enjoyed that, letting them, deservedly so, have the limelight. Because it really was a game for the analysts. And, the really good ones, you're absolutely right, saw things. I can remember with Hubie and with Chuck early on, I can remember they were seeing things 2 or 3 passes ahead. I mean, I'm just following the ball, and they know who the play's being run for, what the options are. And they were so smart. And Pax and Stacey and Bill and Tommy Boerwinkle, who had all played, were the same way. They saw the game differently than I was seeing it. I was seeing it as pass to pass to pass, shot, score. They were seeing all this other stuff, the screen that led to the guy coming to the ball, able to make the pass. I mean, they saw stuff. I'd have to go back and look at the tape to see it. So, analysts were important, and more so, I think, in TV than radio.
Yeah, last one before we let you get out of here. It looks like you got a golf course behind you, which is pretty cool.
I do. I'm right on the 3rd hole.
That's fantastic. Well done. Just you touched on this briefly, but just kind of connecting with Chicago and getting back to the Midwest. What was it like working all those years in this city and this sports crazed town? That must have been a thrill too.
Well, I've said this. In fact, I just said this recently to somebody. He was asking me about, the different franchises in the NBA. I'm of the belief that there are 5 iconic franchises: the Bulls, the Lakers, the Celtics, the Sixers, and the Knicks. Those 5 are the iconic, and for a lot of different reasons. Players that have played there, importance to the fans. I mean, a myriad of reasons why they're iconic. Playoffs, championships, and so forth. Chicago, to me, and I know people say this about Philly and New York, and the greatest sports town in America. Well, the greatest sports town to me was Chicago, and I worked in Philly and I worked in New York. And Chicago to me is the greatest sports town in the world because of the fans. It's easy when a team is on a run like the Bulls got on, winning championship after championship, and then the 2 near misses, even when Michael was gone, and then come back and win 3 more. It's easy to be a fan under those circumstances. But how do you explain that following the dynasty, the Bulls' 1-loss record was the worst maybe in the history of the league for an extended period of time, and yet they were leading the league in attendance? I know there's some Jordan effect and some effect from those great teams and stuff, but that can't be the only reason. So I've always thought that Chicago was the greatest sports town in the country, whether it's the Bulls, the Bears, the Blackhawks, the White Sox, the Cubs. It's just and the fans are loyal, they're diehard, and more important to me, they're Midwest people. So I just like them. They were great to me. And the one thing you have to understand in your profession, when you were doing a lot of writing for newspapers, everybody's not going to love the piece you wrote, and everybody's not going to love Neil Fine. Oh, he's the greatest. I listen to him all the time. There's plenty of fans that are like, that guy's terrible. I don't. But I always felt like I was treated more than fairly in Chicago, and that the fans were great to me. Just the city of Chicago was great to me and great to my wife and my family.
Great. Well, we're going to be excited to have you back in that city next week. I could talk basketball and broadcasting with you all day, Neil, but we appreciate your time. And your philosophy about making the analyst the star is very consistent with the person that I know in you, but I'm glad that you get the well-deserved spotlight next week. Congrats again on your induction into the Bulls Ring of Honor, and we look forward to seeing you next week, Neil.
Thanks. I'm looking forward to seeing you, Casey, and catching up with everybody. Looking forward to it. Thanks, man.
In the meantime, go enjoy that 3rd hole. We'll talk to you soon.
I'm going to. That's the only one I play.
All right. That's going to do it for this edition of the By the Horns podcast. We are presented by Toyota. Remember, Toyota's got more 4-wheel drive vehicles than any other vehicle. Get your Toyota today, and let's go places. For those of you attending the Ring of Honor next week, you'll get the chance to see Neil. And until then, thanks again, Neil.
Thank you, Casey.